Hello, class. Welcome to week 6. We're about 3/4 of the way through this course. And in this week, we're going to focus on finishing your Taking a Stand essay. So, just like usual, I want to start us off by reflecting on the writing process. So, in your worksheet, you will find these questions that I'd like you to answer. Overall, what have you learned about the writing process so far in this class? Have you made any changes to your writing process? And have you applied what you've learned about this process to maybe writing in any of your other classes or work or your personal life? So if you want, you can pause the video and answer those questions and come back. Now, for what we're learning this week, we're going to cover the different types of appeals and claims, which we read about in Chapter 8 last week, and I'll go over those shortly. You're going to learn how to address your opposition respectfully in your essay, how to use transitions in your writing, which you'll do a couple of exercises that'll be due Thursday to help you with this. And then you'll also learn about pronouns, which will be an exercise due Thursday. So I'm going to cover each of these points in the upcoming videos. Now, like I've been saying, when you're halfway through a project, it's always a good idea to go back and reread the instructions to make sure you're not missing something, make sure you haven't forgotten anything, and that you fully understand everything that's expected of you in this assignment. And when you go back and reread the instructions, which you should do sometime this week, if you discover you have a question on something, please reach out and let me know. And just a reminder that this essay is due this Sunday. So last week we covered Discover, where you came up with your topic, position, and kind of working thesis. I had you do your research. You maybe haven't read your sources yet. That's okay. That's kind of something I expected you to do this week, where you read your sources. I'll help you organize your notes and come up with an outline, and then you'll draft your paper, and I'll give you some revising tips later in the last video for this week. Okay. For time, you should spend probably between 4 to 6 hours this week between reading your sources, taking your notes, creating an outline, drafting, and revising. So that gives you a heads up. You may want to just set yourself some goals by which dates to complete the assignments. That's always a good way to stay accountable. All right, now to go into types of claims. So remember, our definition of a claim is that it's an assertion that something is true, but a claim is also an unproven fact, okay? And a lot of times claims are things that maybe can't always be proven as true, sort of like beliefs. All right, so in our textbook, they give you 3 types of claims, and sometimes it helps to identify what type of claim it is you will be arguing in your paper, because that can help you know how to present it and realize what is the consensus or conclusion you want your readers to arrive at. So the first type of claim is substantiation, which is basically what happened. So we can say this is a difference of opinion over a specific event and how it happened or why. So one example of a claim would be sending the National Guard to Portland escalated tensions between law enforcement and protesters. Another claim, kind of viewing the situation differently, could be the National Guard providing needed support to law enforcement in Portland to help minimize property damage and violence in an already volatile situation. So we see that we have the same event, National Guard being sent to Portland, but 2 different interpretations of that action. Okay, for evaluation of what is right. Okay, so definition, whether an action or belief is morally right or wrong. We've seen this with the topic of abortion that I used last week. So we could say abortion in the first trimester of pregnancy is an ethical means of birth control, or we can have another position on that or claim that says abortion that is used as birth control is not morally right. And then the last one is a policy of what should be done, okay? So this is how people should respond to a certain event or situation. We could say stricter gun control laws should be passed to help prevent mass shootings, or there could be the opposing claim, gun-free zones should be outlawed because these places are prime targets for mass shooters, okay? So you can see in each of these how the situations, the substantiation, the evaluation, or the policy is viewed differently, and that's what's creating the differing claims. Now, the next thing I want to cover are what we call persuasive appeals. And these don't necessarily have to do with like claims. What they have to do is how you present your claim and how you try to convince your audience to agree with your claim, okay? And we basically have 3 Greek words to describe them. we have logos, which basically just means logic. So when you're using a logos approach, you're going to rely on reasoning, quantifiable evidence, and statistics. Okay, so just like we think of logic being logical, this is a logical, kind of scientific, research based appeal. The other type of appeal is called pathos, which basically just means emotion. So this type of appeal relies maybe on personal testimony, firsthand accounts, and language that evokes emotion. You often try to get the reader to imagine what it is to be in either your situation or another person's situation. So it almost relies on our empathy a bit. And then ethos basically means character. This is where to persuade someone, you sort of use your credentials. You explain why you should be believed, what your expertise in this matter is, your relationship to the topic, and you usually this type of appeal tries to find a reasonable approach to solve the issue. Okay. And writers will sometimes focus on one appeal maybe more heavily than others. Others will kind of pull on all three. And usually, good, strong arguments will have an emphasis of at least two or all three of these in their writing. So if you want to see a little bit more about these type of appeals, you can see the chart on page 142 in chapter 8 in our textbook. And this will explain the different appeals a little bit more. So what I'd like you to do is in your worksheet, just go ahead and pause and think about which appeal do you maybe want to have be dominant in your paper, or which two do you think would be the best and most convincing for your audience? So realize certain audiences may be drawn a little bit more by emotion, others may care more about character, and still others may be convinced most by logic. So think about your audience and which appeal they would find most convincing. And then lastly, just kind of relate all this together and the different types of appeals of logos, pathos, and ethos is to realize that these types of appeals were made even all the way back in the Bible. So with Paul, there's kind of this famous speech that he gives to the Athenians about the unknown God. And what I'd like you to do is just go into Acts chapter 17, verses 16 to 34, read his kind of speech, and determine for yourself what type of appeals is he making and how is he using these persuasive techniques. So you can do that in the worksheet. And then once you've done that, just go ahead, jump in, read chapter 17. There's a couple pages there, kind of toward the back of the chapter called Adding Cues and Connections. And then read sections 11 and 14 in chapter 34 on grammatical sentences. That will cover the pronouns for you. So once you've done those parts of the worksheet and done this reading, go to the next video where I'll walk you through the 3 exercises that are going to be due on Thursday.